wondering if that could be a consideration. Also, I know that the city has spent quite a bit of money to put on cameras in various areas. Don't know where they're all at, but I know that some cities have live cams on their website feeds. That might be an idea to try to drive traffic to our website as a city and have that function there. They see something going on in the waterfront district down at Cody River Landing, and maybe an event or something, and see something going there that might drive people in that direction. It's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. At this time, I wanted to see if there was any commentary from our city manager, Mr. Duke.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Commentary from the board. I'll start.
Nothing.
Okay. I had one item that I wanted to talk about. I talked about the other item of transportation, and I wasn't sure where that should go. There were two things that I wanted to discuss or ask Ayers Engineering to look at. One would be whether or not we have a specific designated area where we can have a trolley stop or Uber pickup or Lyft pickup, and I wanted to know if you guys were okay putting that on the agenda with Ayers here so we can maybe consult them while they're here in 2 weeks.
We talked about that, and they were putting.
It wasn't in the drawings though when I saw the drawings, so I wanted to talk to them about that.
But they indicated that the loop over by Seaside would be an ideal spot for us. What they.
Correct.
But it's not labeled as such, but it's there.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure that was still on track, so I wanted to be able to talk to them or ask them about that.
Sure.
By consensus.
I put it on.
And then the other item is we obtained property that was off of Post Road that was behind or is adjacent to the parking lot for Whiskey Joe's. I know that we've completed demolition. The property looks clean, looks fantastic. But one of the things I wanted to do with Ayers is have a discussion on, while we're developing the area, what we're going to do with that property. Are we going to use it as a parking lot? Or are we going to use it as a park? Just some additional space, put picnic tables out there. And I wanted to get Ayers' recommendation on what they think we could do with that property and what it would look like in cost. So I figured that may be a discussion that we want to have with the Ayers engineering firm here, because they may have some valuable input on usage for that property based on this project. And I didn't know if you guys by consensus were okay discussing that.
Sure, we can talk to them about it and see what they say. Doesn't hurt.
Some of the chairs always want to put up parking garages, but sure, we'll talk to them.
If it's additional parking, then so be it. I wanted to.
Parking garages.
But, you know, whatever they want to use that space for, not they, what we want to use that space for, I wanted some recommendations from them as they're developing the area.
I mean, I'm a big fan for putting more public use area in that district. Unfortunately, that's probably the least desirable place to put it, but, yeah. It is what it is. I'm just saying.
Hey, if we want to use it as a park, that's all open for discussion.
I'm just saying, you know.
Sure. But I think Ayers is a good person or entity to talk to about that, since they're in the middle of a development project. Well,
You're also looking at a recommendation of sales.
So, but those are all things that we can discuss. I was hoping with Ayers present. That's all I had for my commentary.
Nothing other than the agenda item.
Okay.
Agenda item as well. I'm good.
All right. Well, let's get to it then. The board business is going to be a residential grant program review. The discussion on that. I want to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The grant program handbook is in your packet. There's also a historic financial data document behind the handbook to give some idea of what the grant program has been over the years and actuals that Ms. Goslin put together for us. Ms. Hanson is here she oversees the program to answer questions about what it is right now. And based on our previous conversation, it sounded like you wanted to consider, do we want to up the amounts? Do we want to expand the potential recipients? You know, should it include commercial properties? And so I think we've got all the resources available to fuel your conversation. And we'd be looking for your guidance, if any, on how to draw up a different version of what the grant program looks like. That you can see what it is, both in the guidance and how it's administered, and how it has, what it is in financial terms.
And I want to note, because I think we have to amend our policies on who's going to be eligible, because as we have adjusted our CRA boundaries, I think that changes the guidelines and the eligibility for where people have to live to be able to accept that grant or be qualified for that grant. So I think that at some point we need to just make sure there's a policy in place while we're on this item to make sure that, it's my understanding now that we've adjusted the CRA boundaries, there's certain residents and parts of the city that were cut out of CRA as it's not considered blighted, which we made that decision. I think that would disqualify people from this particular grant because it's not a blighted area.
My recollection of my reading through this, when I read through it before and read through it recently, is basically it's a verbiage change. Right now it says you have to be a resident of the city of Fort Ritchie. You would just need that to change to you have to be a resident in the city CRA area, and we would have to somehow spell out how people would know.
But I wanted to address that, so
Yeah.
there's a policy in place.
Yeah, obviously it would have to be, you know, with residents. Now, my major reason for bringing this up, actually, I think, shot the bag, it's a pretty good plan. As a standalone plan for lighted single-family residences, which is what it's intended for. It's just that it was written long enough ago to where the amount is $1,000, and we all know $1,000 don't buy what $1,000 used to buy. So you're not seeing very many applications right now, because if you're gonna replace windows, doors, you're gonna paint, you're gonna put on a roof, and you're in a blighted home, which, you know, and you're a resident, implying that you're of somewhat limited means, that $1,000 is not gonna help you do what we want you to do, so.
No, I agree.
So, I mean, that was my main reason for wanting to look at this, but let's look at the numbers.
But we have two issues. Number one, what the numbers are going to be, and number two, whether or not we want to include businesses, because it's always been residential areas.
The intention originally, I recall when this was first passed, was to pass a companion, which we used to have, a program designed specifically again for businesses, which included things like landscaping the front of the business, upgrading facades, bringing signs up to code, things like that.
I'm for expanding it to businesses, because I didn't see where we had that now.
We had it in the past.
But it's not here.
That is correct.
So, but I'm for including businesses, because if you have a business front on or near 19 and you need a little help to spruce it up.
I would suggest, if somebody could dig around in the files, again, we did have a program for businesses, and you might want to dig that up. It did, like I said, it included things like painting, facade upgrades, bringing signage up to code, landscaping, things like that, to improve the street appeal of businesses, especially appeal of businesses.
Correct. And
I think Veronica has something to,
This is the
Yeah.
resolution in 0811. It's called the Paint Up Fix Up Grant Program.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's
that's
the
it, yeah.
resolution for it.
So what I wanted to see if we could do, just by consensus at this point, is do we, just generally speaking, want to include businesses into this grant program?
Well, I think
agree we should.
again, I think it should be a separate grant program. I don't think they could be easily folded into this grant program.
Okay. Well, the mechanics on how we do it, I want to just make sure that that's what we want to do
Yeah,
first. and then the
I'm
mechanics
for it. I mean,
Well, my question is that resolution, that paint up, fix up, is that an ongoing thing right now? I mean,
No.
do we have it here already, or is?
Well, it's not funded. I didn't see it in the budget, so.
that stopped at a certain point in time. We also had we had a residential program before this program. It was two programs, that's one part of it. If that's strictly the business side.
But if the language in that is correct, we may be able to set the amounts and implement.
Well, this is a residential
Okay.
thing. This is for single-family and two-family owner-occupied homesteaded residences. This doesn't have anything about businesses. Here,
That's correct.
okay.
Which is what we have in place. What we have here is a
No, I
residential.
understand that, but we did have a business owner. Somewhere in your
She said
filing
that, right?
cabinet, she did.
Okay, okay. So the other thing we should discuss too, and I think you've touched on it, are the amounts. The total amount that we have in the program was 50,000. How much do we normally expend out of that every year?
On page 21.
Yeah, last
Is it on
page,
there?
yeah, the last page has the,
I didn't see that.
Correct, Chase.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so the question is, do we want to adjust the total amount plus the amount per person?
let me ask one question. Have we not been getting applications or have we not been getting qualified people?
We haven't been receiving applications.
Okay.
Well, I think Bill touched on why. It's $1,000. I think a lot of people.
I didn't know if they were getting stopped out because of the income or they just weren't, it's not enough.
So they put it out on, the webpage, the Facebook group, relatively recently, within the last year or so, I think you put it out there. I don't think it's for lack of knowledge. I have people in my neighborhood ask me about it. When I explain them to it, they just like, oh, well, no.
Having used this program recently, on page 19, there's a list of 5 things that need to be submitted for this. And one of the things is most current federal tax forms and 2 pay stubs. I'm thinking maybe some people are hesitant on turning in an application for $1,000 when you have to turn in 2 pay stubs and your income tax forms.
Well,
So, and speaking with them when I'm doing this, that really is not relevant to, if you meet all the other criteria, they're not gonna not give, let's say, me money because of the tax forms or the pay. If they weren't there, they wouldn't give it to me. But what's on the tax form or my pay stub is not relevant to whether or not they give me the grant money. Is that correct?
Isn't there an income cap?
Yes.
The median income. That's why we ask for the tax form. So if you're below a certain median income,
So what is that cap right now?
80%
Of what?
of the median income of whatever it is that
Yes,
you're at.
it's listed here on page 20. It's 35,800 if you're one person.
Yeah, it depends on how many people are in the home.
Yeah, isn't it, that's dependent on whether it's a matching program or a full grant.
Correct.
I think if you're taking advantage of the matching portion of it, you don't have to prove your income. You just have to be in a blighted area.
Correct.
If you want to actually not have to match it, but just get the full grant amount, then you have to prove that you're, whatever it is, 80% of your median income, whatever.
Correct.
Then it's income qualified.
Right.
So there's a 2-part component to it.
Well, the question is, do we want to continue to have the 2-part?
I think so. I would expect,
Well, yeah, you don't want lower income people to be stuck with having to match something when they want to fix up their
I
house.
mean, the whole point is, yeah, if you have low income people in a small rundown house, and the goal is to get it fixed up so that street's not blighted, you want to incentivize the people to do it.
Mhm.
And if they can't afford to do it, they're not gonna do it. There's other people that are in not quite that situation, that the 50/50 grant's a bonus to them, like it was to you. But again, 50/50,
But on a 50/50, we shouldn't have to show income, I wouldn't think.
you don't.
Okay, that's what I was saying. So,
Who said you do?
You do.
well, let's get clarification from the city. That's what I was trying to ferret out here.
We collected either way,
What would be the purpose of the income or proving income?
because if you're below the median income, then we match you.
Yeah, but
If you're not,
Or
then-
if you're above the median income, we match you, dollar for dollar,
Sure.
up to 1,000. If you're below the median income, then we give you up to
So if they're just
$1,000.
asking to be matched, why would they need a
Yeah, if there's no upper ceiling, there's no point.
Right.
We collect it either way.
But that's what I'm saying, is do we need to do, like, for instance, I put a roof on.
Well, I think we
It was
should.
more than $1,000.
Well, I think we should change that, first of all. In other words, if someone's just asking for a match, I don't think they should have to show income or their
Right,
tax
that's-
form.
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
And the only time they should have to go through those hoops is if they are getting the entire amount
I
without
mean, if
matching.
you look right on
Right.
page 15 here in your packet, it says income verified, yes, no, matching, non-matching. But I don't see where that really implies. It should be income verified, no, non-matching. You know, if somebody's not, trying to get the,
So if you're asking for $500 to replace one window or something, that's when you would need to, see, that's why I'm confused.
No, because,
If you're looking for $500 to get your window replaced.
Right.
And you don't want to spend any money, you're gonna have to provide your W-2.
Okay.
if you want to pay $250, they'll pay $250 and you don't
If
have to
you
show
want to
them.
pay $250 and don't want to give your W-2, you just pay $250, they pay $250 and you get your $500.
Okay.
So do we get this, is that one of the confines of what we can set here? Mr. Matthew?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
In other words, is that a city function for Mr. Duke to set, or is that a council decision?
To set what?
The requirement for the
Requirements.
W-2,
That's your decision
Okay.
here.
I just don't want to step on.
But yes, why they've been requiring it for both, I remember hearing a memo when that came out several years ago saying you don't need to do that.
Okay.
Okay, but they've still been doing it, I don't know why. And, no, you can set those requirements, yeah, sure you can.
Okay.
But,
I'll do it.
yeah, I mean, there's no reason to.
Right, okay, so that's the first thing, so we got that.
Okay.
So maybe that will
So
help
by
some people.
consensus, are we okay not, if it's a matching situation, we're not gonna require any kind of verification of income?
Correct.
We okay with that?
The only reason I would presume that they were doing that was because, well, we don't know if you're going to be able to be eligible or not, so give us all your stuff and we'll tell you one way or the other. But if you tell them the standard, I went in, when this first passed, I went in and got my sign this way. No, I know I'm not going to pass that. I'm not going to do that. Just give it to me, and pay for half the sign, my sign.
The other question, as we budgeted, I think, it was a budgeted item, which we budget every year, 50,000, so I don't know if there's much we can do about that this year. But the question is whether or not we want to.
Yeah, it's down to 25
this year.
now.
Okay.
We knocked it down.
So somebody did, not me.
Well, we haven't been spending it at all. If you look at the last 5 years, you haven't done over 10 grand.
Yeah, last year we spent
last 5 years, I've seen CRA funding go from 600,000 to 1.2 billion.
So when we come into budget season, I think we're gonna have to discuss how much we want to budget for this. Let's start there. But the question becomes is, I think the amount is too low that is the cap that we pay, which is $1,000. And I would think that something like a $2,500 cap would be more appropriate given today's climate with the construction.
I agree. I'd go
Cost.
5. Come on, what's the price?
I mean, a new roof for new AC, I mean, here, the list of things that we can do is,
I don't think,
and
yeah,
Moving from 1 to 25 is not a big move. I mean, the roofs are how much roofs?
14,000,
14,000. When this thing was written, you could get a roof for $7,000-8,000. AC units, windows, everything has gone up extra, and not only astronomically because of inflation, but with the hurricane that blew through the south part of the state, trying to get anything done.
So if we set the cap at $5,000, that means only 5 people get it this year.
Under this, yeah, but.
So the question,
well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the question becomes, if you're gonna set it that high, I think you have to budget, I would think about $100,000 to keep up with that $5,000, which I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
If that's-
I would say you probably should, yeah.
Mr. McClary, you were.
Yeah, actually, it was just brought to my attention, do we want to look at the eligible improvements on page 8? Because I think someone mentioned ACs, but ACs aren't on there. This looks to be mostly exterior related items. Is that
well, that's
something
the
you want?
light, so
Well,
here
I'm
it
just
is.
saying, do you want to reevaluate for landscaping? I'm not sure if that's on there or not. Or,
I think pretty much anything that's exterior around the house would go have a direct impact on blight or your,
Yeah.
which is
I think I'm
what
the one
we're
that said
talking
AC, that
about.
was my
So,
fault.
and they have kind of, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. They have all this stuff here that has to do with the exterior of the home.
Landscaping.
Okay.
Landscaping, I'm okay with.
Yeah, when I was landscaping and then just to get that covered in.
I don't see a problem with that. Or people have nice lawns or something.
Yeah, I mean.
I mean, I think this list is really good. I think, it certainly addresses the blight issue. I mean, it is a visual thing, so I think those are all, I mean, an exterior door can cost you $2,000 for a hurricane-proof now. Absolutely.
So, and then if we're gonna set the amounts to say that we pick 5,000 for the cap, and we're gonna set $100,000 by budget, do we implement that on the next budget cycle? In other words, because what you don't want is 10 or 15 people to apply for it, only 5 get it this year, because there's only 5,000,
Well,
25,000 in the budget.
I guess that's my question. It is a first come, first served. So if you bump it up to 5,000 people, $5,000, excuse me, you're gonna get some interest fairly quickly.
Correct.
On this. So my guess is you'll flush right through 100 grand fairly quickly.
That's why I think we should implement it next budget season.
Well, yeah, but do you then stop it at the first 20 people?
Yes, you have to, that's what's budgeted.
Okay, I just
Or
want,
step it this year, do 25 for the rest of the year and then up at 5,000 next year if you want to do that.
Or you could open it up, to the income qualified people first, then let a week or two go by and then open it up to direct matching.
That's gonna be a lot of,
That's a headache.
I'm just-
yeah, I know.
Just kicking around ideas is all I'm saying.
I know, yeah, it sounds like a lot of work
just
though.
now that we're talking a lot more money, how do we track
I think
that it's actually spent for whatever it is it's spent for? Not use it.
For the grants,
Yeah.
like how do we know what they've been trying for? Generally, we don't get outside landscaping and things like that. The permits that have been applied for are permits that we send the building official out to inspect, and they're usually windows and doors. We don't get any dock seawall repairs. We don't get any facade. We don't get any fence repairs. We don't get paints, gutters, fascias, roofs we get, and exterior doors and windows is really what we've seen.
So, and the reason I'm really asking the question now is because now with 5 grand, with $1,000, that's not a whole lot of money. With $5,000, you're gonna get fraud. Sorry, it's gonna happen.
You're gonna get what?
If it's one of those projects that requires a permit, Mr. Alexander
It's canceled
inspects
checks.
permit.
It's canceled checks. It's,
Yes.
okay, so there
We've
is,
only denied one on a canceled check, if I remember, about 2 years ago. Someone wrote a check, but it was somehow it was some credit being given by the roofing company or something, right, a few years ago.
okay, so
We
so
denied
good
that
track
claim.
canceled checks.
No, it's a canceled
Okay,
check.
and invoice, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, and they're very.
No, it's in the rules here,
Okay,
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that,
Now, usually the code enforcement officer would go there to look or something like this, depending on what it is, Yeah.
Can I ask a question? If we're gonna move it to $5,000, would it be best that a contractor do the job and not a homeowner? Or are you still okay with a homeowner doing a $5,000 project?
well, but, oh, I see what you're saying.
Because they can do a
Otherwise, you just pay for a Home Depot charge.
you can get a house in Harbor Point and, well, no, they're out of it, so they can't use it, but you can get a home and they could do a $5,000 outside exterior paint job. And they can say they're gonna paint the house themselves,
Oh, and then they get the 5
and
grand?
they get the 5
Oh,
grand.
no, that shouldn't
The
happen.
way we have it now, it's no way, we have no way. I can't send the inspector out there to go inspect it, it's not inspectable. I can send code enforcement out there, but are we gonna hand somebody $5,000 to do that type of job without any verification? Because now they're gonna probably match. I mean, so, how does council?
Well, I mean, you needed a canceled check, so maybe you would need receipts.
Yeah, but anybody can
but
get
it's
home
not-
to neighbors. It's,
I buy
$300 paint, so-
Yeah, okay, yeah. I said it and I was thinking at the same time, so sorry, back up.
See, now that we're talking
Wanna
5 grand,
set
we gotta be careful with
Do you want to set it,
Yeah, I agree. I
do you
agree.
want to set it according to the job? If they're gonna do an AC, provide this X amount of dollars. If they're gonna do paint, provide X amount of dollars. That way it's-
I think if we're gonna set,
Going back to what Todd just said, I mean, could we set a different dollar limit on like 1,000 for DIY or 5,000 for contractor shop?
that's what I was gonna say, yes.
Was it?
That was my thought.
Well,
So,
that was a darn good thought, yeah.
well, no, but I'm saying, look, you know,
They're brilliant.
no, because I was going in that direction, because I think that if you're gonna have someone just use it to buy materials and we're not gonna inspect it, then we just leave it sit as it is, but.
And let me interfere too. Let me bring you in, Dan. Don't you guys go out and paint homes for folks and stuff?
Yeah, but we don't, we just do it as volunteers.
No, I understand that, but I'm using the example of somebody has a house that needs painting. Under this grant program, they can buy a bunch of paint, and potentially an organization like you is going out and doing the labor as charity.
Right?
I mean, that's well within the parameters of what we want this program to do. So I would like the ability for that to happen. That's all I'm saying. So again, I could potentially say, yeah, $1,000 for DIY and $5,000 for contractor jobs.
Or, okay, now I'll throw a flip side on it.
Of course you will, that's what you do.
Do we want to cap a DIYer who, I mean, maybe we shouldn't do $5,000, but do you want to cap a DIYer who wants to redo his fence? You get fence in a box, that's $200 a box, that's what, 20 feet?
Yeah, and the great thing about fences is they will never until they hit a rock, so they'll never be very deep enough.
But what
I
I'm trying,
watched 2 of them blow down every time a hurricane comes through in my neighborhood.
do we want to do $2,000 for reseeded materials and $5,000 for contractors?
No, I think we just leave it at 1,000 unless they're gonna hire somebody. Because it negates the front issue. But for $5,000, which is 10 grand, if it's matching, you can get a lot done around your house on it, even with hired help. And that's really, I think the goal. But I think the hired help doesn't negate it completely, but really helps to get around the fraud issues.
Is it a licensed contractor with permit?
They have
Yes.
to be permitted in the county and have a tax receipt with the city. That's what you'd always used to be.
So I can't do painting for that,
You can get a professional paint company.
can't get a permit?
No, I get that, but if it's a professional company in other words, if it's a professional landscaping company and you hire them to come in, I think that's different than if you do it yourself. So whatever field you're in, as long as you have someone that's licensed in that field, if there is such a license, business license, if nothing else, then you can do it. That's my opinion. So
I'm just asking a question.
now we've given her a lot of,
What is?
Now we've spun around in circles
Why
3
don't we
times.
settle on anything?
Do
We
it.
got some stuff to chew on. I mean, let's think it over. We brought up a lot of ideas. Let's bring it back.
well, we have till next budget year, apparently.
You can always change the lines on a budget. Right, Jim?
Normally I would say yes to that.
Under our situation with our CRA, I would say no.
We had to allocate everything this year, right?
Yes, however, we do have a contingency line.
We do, I was gonna say.
We could transfer from that.
Matter of fact,
so-
that's why it's here, otherwise, I would presume we can do that, otherwise you wouldn't have presented it today, right? It'd just be an exercise, right? So, yes, there is a contingency, and that this is here to determine if you want to expand this to the contingency. I would
Which is our
presume.
contingency?
Or it's been brought up today.
300,000.
Oh, let's not go crazy.
You asked.
You asked. You asked for a number, she gave you a number.
Got it. Where did they-
This was a non-action item, so
Yeah, well, like I said,
Yeah.
this is a good discussion. We're all thinking about it. And let's put it on the next.
Can I inquire, because how much is the contingency in the budget?
300,000.
$300,000, just so you understand here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel. You're in the middle of an audit period that you're doing a performance audit, okay? And they're gonna look at this council meeting, and they're gonna see that you did a contingency. Have you addressed it? Have you tried to do something? This isn't something to put off. Now, you gotta do it today, But you may want to give some thought between now and September 30th.
Oh, I think we should put it on for next meeting.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay, you really want to do that.
Yeah.
Right, but just don't let it go to the end, because that was one of the comments from the auditor.
Yeah, no, I think we should
Yeah.
think about it.
That's good that it's on here.
Have Scott and Mr. Colombo have the mind meld again, so they both come out with the same.
That was almost scary, huh?
That was kind of scary. Yeah.
I'll start with me.
Well, let's.
He was on the spot.
Tom, anything else?
No, I agree what we're doing, but I agree as well as that commercial.
Yeah, I think we should definitely have commercial, I agree.
And Linda?
Agree with everything.
So the next step, since this is just a discussion item,
Adjourn.
do we want to make an action item at some point? Or, you know, where do you guys want to go from here? You want it back on another meeting? Because you gotta give Mr. D some direction on what to do with this discussion, I would think.
Well, no, I mean, we could certainly have, John and Veronica, dig into looking at what we got and redefining some of the things like the CRA area and things like that.
We could put together a draft.
A draft.
Here's what it could look like,
Kind of what we've been talking
based on your many suggestions, ideas. And, if that's what you like, that's what you like. If it isn't, it feels to me like we've got plenty of time to
And do one for commercial.
work on it for.
I'd also get a lot of input from Veronica and her team, since they're the ones that are dealing with it all the time.
They have to administer it,
Yeah,
yes,
they
correct.
said, going back to, 2010, somewhere around there, I'm pretty darn sure we had a commercial grant program, so.
We'll go through the funds.
If we can find it, that would be very helpful.
Yep.
I know that, again, other cities do have them too, so you can always look into
But
that.
in my preparation for this, I found one city that makes it very simple. It's commercial or residential. If it's up to $5,000, it's a certain amount. I think it was $1,500. If it's between 5 and 10, it's 3,000. If it's over 10, it was 4 or 5,000.
I kind of like that.
No income qualifications,
I like
which
that. That's a good idea,
from the administration side, I don't want people's paychecks
Well,
and
like I
tax
said, the
returns.
income
and sitting-
qualifications were there for obviously very low income. So
Understood.
you would never have that on a business, for instance. That, whatever the business plan is designed to be, it's got to be. It doesn't matter if you're profitable or not profitable.
I like his idea.
I do, I like that idea too. That was a good idea. You didn't mind
Support your
that?
idea, even though it wasn't yours.
I stole it.
But that idea only works for if they're,
No, because if it's $5,000 over of 10 grand worth of value, that's your 50% match.
right, but that takes out people that can't afford to do anything. So if someone wants to do a $5,000 project and they,
No, it's 1,500 up to $3,000.
There was you could tell they used a ratio, but it was up to 5,000, but you're gonna get 1,500 from us.
hear me out on this one. Because right now you have a divide on how we're gonna handle things versus if they qualify income-wise or don't. Now, if they qualify income, they come out with their pay stubs and tax forms, and they meet the qualifications, and they want to do a $4,000 project. To say we're only going to fund 1,500 doesn't help them because they can't afford potentially to do the other. So that's the problem with that tier, with what we're trying to do, which is cure blight.
And like I said, that tier program works great on a commercial
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
plan that works that.
For the community? Yes, for commercial.
Because you're not gonna be giving a non-matching grant to a business.
All right, well then put it in this way, if it's, you can do the same tier program, but then you can just take away the matching component for lower income individuals. So if your project's $1,500, you get $1,500.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. But you can do the tier if they don't qualify anyways for the income because I follow you there.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But I don't want to exclude folks that have homes that may be on a fixed income that can't afford, which is the purpose of this program. So the tier just doesn't work under those circumstances.
Well, the tier does, we're basically saying if you don't have, if you're lower income, you just get up to $5,000 grant,
Correct.
is the way it works. I mean, the tier kind of still works, it just,
For the matching part, yes.
Well, no, you don't have to match the, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
you're basically
Obviously,
saying you just get up to
obviously,
5,000.
you're saying you don't have to match to get $5,000, but you can't do anything for $5,000 anyway, so you're gonna be spending some money, so you're pretty much matching. Is that where you're going with that?
No, what I'm saying is that you can institute the 50-50 matching and put in the caveat, if you provide lower income individuals, matching is not required. So basically, you're just saying you get up to $5,000.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, okay, well, that's essentially what the plan is, right?
Yeah.
That was one though.
So do we muddy that up for your ability to put it together
It's
for us?
perfectly clear in my head, so. Clear as mud.
So just, yeah, gaze
Gaze into my head.
gaze into Todd's head.
We will put together a draft for you. Good luck with what we talked about.
We should really end every meeting that way. Good luck with what we talked about.
All right, any old business?
No more nuggets of knowledge out of me.
Nuggets, nuggets.
Looking for motion.
Motion adjourned.